And we're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Coffin Cast number 11. Today I have Jeff from Free Radio Revolution with me. We are going to be discussing his recent video aimed toward roaming millennial, and we're going to be talking about the LGBTQ agenda and the New World Order. So thank you for joining me, Jeff.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So let's go ahead and jump right into it here. So let's go ahead and get your take on what your recent video about roaming millennial doing her stream or her collab with Milo Stewart. Can you give us a little brief overview of what that video entailed?
Yeah, I have. I've been following roaming since she burst on the scene with the Philip DeFranco promotion. Right. And for the most part, yeah, I've liked her content, and I tried to contact her a few times, but I didn't do the email thing, which is what I should have done, because I know how it is. I get gazillions of messages and all that, but I wanted to have the opportunity to enlighten her on some of these agendas that are happening. And then I saw that she put up. Now I should go back and say, yes, I did do one video a few weeks back, a flattering video of roaming millennial, because it was dealing with her sort of defense of families, of proper parenting, of motherhood, fatherhood, the importance of these things that the third wave feminists are really attacking. And so I did a video, thanking her for that, and agreeing with many of her points. So when I saw her put up the video dealing with Milo Stewart, that was, I think the video speaks for itself. If people have a proper context on the characterization of Milo Stewart, who could very well be an actor here to push or trigger people with her sensational sort of completely over the top racist and misogynist and transphobic claims. Everybody is against her, and everyone's against her type of people that she identifies with. So when I saw that roaming millennial had done a video with her, that was not a good thing. So I didn't think, from my experience of covering the LGBT agenda for the last couple of years, I think it's possibly the worst thing you could do is to promote these characters. So I'm starting to get very skeptical about many of the SJW critics who are constantly featuring these characters, but not discussing the bigger picture of what these agendas are really about.
So what is the bigger picture? I mean, I watched some of your videos, and I mean, it seems to be going along the same lines as like Illuminati, New World Order stuff. I mean, is that where you're saying the bigger picture is coming from? Is a secret organization or what?
Well, it's, let's toss out the Illuminati term. That's a loaded term that right now is used for ridicule. The New World Order term.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. So,
no, it's okay. No, I understand that, but I totally understand your perspective. I'm just trying to explain that words are loaded often, and this is something that you see with these agendas, how they're able to use words and trigger people with words and stuff like that. So it's I mean, to get into the whole history of what's going on to the world requires a very, very lengthy discussion, and I did do an intro to the New World Order video the other day to try to help people like roaming millennial and others that might be following her out without spooking them about this this plan to form a one world government and to severely depopulate the planet. So my perspective from the 2 years that I've been covering the LGBT agenda is that it is primarily a eugenics sort of agenda, and it's one of their methods of encouraging people to stop having, or stop using their biological reproductive system to create families and stuff like that, and to bring the population down. So they want to normalize these lifestyles, which for the most part are toxic, especially when it comes to transgender people. Almost half of transgender people, after they go through their transition, attempt suicide. So I'm very, very, very against people who promote this type of mentality, which is mental illness. So that's one of the reasons why I speak out against it, and that's why I was pretty disappointed with Roaming Millennial's video. But I did give Roaming Millennial the benefit of the doubt, because when she came and she commented on the video, I appreciated that she commented, because she said, yeah, we'll do a show or whatever. So I said, okay, you know what? I'll take down the video.
Accused her of being part of the agenda. Of course, she's got to defend herself.
Pardon me? Could you say that again?
I said you accused her of being part of the agenda, or at least maybe being.
No, I speculated that she
alluded to it.
A gatekeeper,
right?
And that's perfectly normal. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not, it's actually, it would be highly, people would be skeptical of me if I didn't point those things out, because the way she.
What's a gatekeeper?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, actually. A gatekeeper. Okay, so imagine this. You have these agendas, okay? So say one of the agendas that you're trying to push is transgenderism. So what you do is you sensationalize it by throwing out people like Jazz Jennings, Caitlyn Jenner, Laverne Cox, and then you put a whole bunch of characters on YouTube to push these memes. Now, naturally, what's going to happen is there's going to be a very strong reaction from the public who are not indoctrinated into these agendas. They are being indoctrinated into them. That's why so many people attend gay pride parades and stuff like that. But they're not fully indoctrinated into the madness that these agendas are proliferating. So this is what I speculate happens. And we know this gatekeeping term can be applied to a lot of social media critics and people, even major league sort of alt-right channels. Okay, so you have the people, the Milo Stewarts, the Jazz Jennings, the Caitlyn Jenners. You have all these characters that come and put out this insanity dealing with unlimited genders and unlimited pronouns and all this madness. So people will have a naturally strong reaction to this. Now, if you position gatekeepers to react to these people, so you have people that a lot of people will turn to get their opinion, and if those people soften the sort of impact and say, well, let's listen to them, let's take them seriously, they're people too, we should listen to their, that is a tactic that would be used in order to bring in these agendas. So that's what a gatekeeper would be. The gatekeeper is trying to keep you away. It's ostensibly critiquing the SJW insanity, but is really just trying to position themselves to keep you from going further, just to keep you, on the bubble, not really seeing what's really behind the agenda, so that you are comfortable with it and eventually you grow to accept it. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Well, okay, so basically what you're telling me is that one of the speculations that you made, not accusation, but speculation that you made, is that it's possible that Roaming Millennial is put there by whoever this cabal is to kind of distract you from what they're actually trying to push. Is that what you're saying?
No, not to distract you, to actually indoctrinate you into it, to be the person who offers the critique, right? So like say, instead of people coming to my channel to get the what I would define as a much more sort of educated sort of perspective on what's going on, they go to a channel, say like Roaming Millennial, and they stop there. They don't go any further because the gatekeeper comes in and says, you know what, yeah, I don't agree with it, but you know what, we should listen to these people, and they do have a valid point of view. And what happens over time is that these agendas that would be unacceptable if you were around in the 80s or the 90s or even the 2000s are now becoming normalized. So that is the importance. Now, I as I said, like, I always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I did that for Roaming Millennial. So with Roaming Millennial, I said, you know what, thank you for coming and leaving the comment. I had nothing, there was nothing wrong with my video, by the way. And there's many other people who have already made videos on Roaming Millennial's decision to support Milo Stewart, who are equally as critical, if not more critical, of Roaming Millennial. And I've seen about 3 or 4 of them so far. So it's definitely not just me who noticed that this was really out of character, potentially out of character, or just out of left field. It didn't seem like, you would expect this from Roaming Millennial, because she's been a critic of a lot of this SJW.
So if we look back in the past, she tried to do a collab with Riley J. Dennis, who absolutely refused and said that validating her point of view is basically like validating a Nazi. That's essentially what he said. I mean, she's been trying to reach across the aisle for a good few months now. So I mean, I would say that she's more trying to do what I'm trying to do, and that's not maintain an echo chamber. I mean, isn't that a fair speculation as well?
That's all cool, and that's a distinct possibility. It's certainly still in my mind. I have not closed the book on Romy, even though we've been in a bit of a Twitter war. I invited her, and I said, "Well, look, I'll come on your show. You know, put the ball in your court, and we'll discuss this." And she initially agreed, but then she wrote me back saying, "I have absolutely no interest whatsoever in discussing your belief in the New World Order or a gay agenda." So I was like,
Right.
well, there's no point me coming on your show if all you want to do is defend yourself and I can't say my point of view about what's going on. So yeah, that's kind of where it was left off. So I think it's extremely hypocritical of her to, reach out to Milo Stewart and bring her on and do a video with her and say, I don't agree with Milo Stewart, but I'm open and accommodating, and we have to learn to listen to other people, even if we totally disagree with their point of view. So she said all that stuff in the video, and then yet she has no interest whatsoever in discussing the legitimacy of a New World Order or one of their major agendas, which is the LGBT agenda, or the gay agenda, as it used to be called.
So, being a bisexual person myself, am I a part of this agenda?
No, you're only a part of the agenda. I mean, look, let me get this clear. I am not at all against anybody who identifies as gay or lesbian, not even transgender so much. I actually feel very, very sorry for them. And I have to say this over and over again. If you're a grown person, you have absolutely every right to live your life in accordance to the law, and to enjoy yourself. And if if what makes you happy is to be with someone of the same sex, then by all means, you're not hurting anybody. I have no problem with that whatsoever. What I have a problem with is the conditioning of people, especially children, into these agendas, which they try to normalize through all the media. And so this is what I've been exposing for the last couple of years, because I feel that that is dangerous.
So I guess coming from my corner, because I'm not so much, I mean, I believe that there is some validity, even if just the slightest bit of validity to the speculation that there might be a cabal behind at least certain things that happen, with geopolitics. But I try to make sure that I approach everything with the same kind of skeptical kind of, most of the evidence for a secret cabal can also be explained by other ordinary things. So I guess my question is, wouldn't it be that maybe the liberals, the Democrats, want to make more people, I mean, if there is some kind of agenda to push, the LGBTQ lifestyle, then wouldn't that be more like a Democratic ploy to try and get more voters for Democrats more than it would be some kind of New World Order agenda? Or what do you think about that?
Well, I think that you bring up an interesting point, and I think there is some validity to it, in the sense that not everybody who is going to be behind this is going to be aware of the agenda. In fact, probably most people aren't. I would suspect that most gay people would be fully behind the whole LGBT. Most, I'm not saying all of them, because I know a lot of them come to my videos and thank me and say, thank you for waking me up to this. I used to be part of this, or, I see what they're doing. So I think that there's a large amount of people who are unwittingly partaking in these agendas, thinking that somehow it is a liberating process. And this is all because of the cultural Marxism that is infested every element of Western sort of academia. So this is the problem, is that most people that are fighting for this don't realize ultimately what it's about, and that it's about eliminating them from the gene pool. It's really about depopulation at the end of the day. And this was predicted, 20, 30, 40 years ago, that all this would come to pass. So this is Ralph A. Epperson wrote a book in 1989 called The New World Order. And he said that normalized gay marriage will be normalized, heterosexual marriage will be phased out, all kinds of LGBT sort of, identities will be normalized. And then they would attack the Christian church. Oh, there's so much more to it. But yes, in a nutshell, absolutely, these things have been predicted even long before that. But that's a perfect example.
Okay. So, I mean, I can definitely see where, people are getting this idea because we are seeing a kind of demonization of the traditional straight white person. Also, now it's kind of become a pejorative to call someone cis, which basically just means normal. So, I mean, I get where you would be coming from with this, but my kind of idea is that it might be an unintended consequence to the to the 60s. You know what I'm saying? Like when America kind of woke up and tried to break from what they thought was a type of tyranny, they started becoming more tolerant of everything. And I think it just continued.
Yeah, that's all out of the Tavistock Institute. The entire hippie movement was created and orchestrated in order to introduce a libtard sort of mentality amongst the American public and the British and European. So this is the whole thing. There's a much bigger picture at play. Ostensibly, it's all about people getting their freedom, but really it's not. It's about normalizing these things and programming people into accepting them and eventually becoming them. And making them fashionable, making them palatable, making them exotic, sexy, making them something that kids will readily accept. And they're doing this at a rapid pace, and it's very disturbing what they're doing to children. When you have 2-year-olds that are declaring themselves the opposite sex, and their parents are instantly going down the road of the transition, this is absolute madness. This is child abuse, these things that are happening. So as I say, I mean, look, it's not about like I am in favor of homosexual people having rights, all equality, except for marriage, because I don't really see that as something that is necessary. And I do not believe, and I used to believe, that they should have the right to marriage and stuff like that. I also do not believe that gay people should have the ability to adopt children, because I think that children need, in order for them to have a fair chance of being successful and happy and productive human beings, they need strong mother and father figures. And the cultural Marxists who came over after or during the Second World War and infested academia, their number one target for programming people into cultural Marxism was to attack the family nucleus and to stop parenting, stop mothers from bringing up kids, get mothers in the workforce, condition people through the guise of equality that, both parents need to work and the state needs to bring up the children. And this is exactly where we are today. And I don't know, I can't even think of one person that I know that comes from a family that is still together, that the parents that marry each other are happily married and still together. It just doesn't exist. And they've normalized this throughout the culture. This is with the movies, the the music videos, television shows, all these things. Porn, probably the biggest thing of all that they've used. The biggest weapon they've used to destroy the strength of humans is through porn, and to normalize gay porn, to normalize, she-male porn and all this insanity. And these things, like, people don't understand how they affect them. They think it's perfectly normal in 2017 to go up to Pornhub and watch, gangbanging or gay orgies and stuff like that. And it's absolutely devastating what it does to your body, your mind. So these are toxic elements that are eroding our strength as human beings, and they're turning us against family lives and motherhood and fatherhood.
So you say that it's eroding our lives, it's affecting us mentally. Are there any studies that back that claim up at all?
Well, yeah, sure. There's a lot of, I constantly put links in all my videos. There's a lot of top psychologists in the world who say that transgenderism is a mental illness.
Well, I mean, I know that gender dysphoria is a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean more like how is porn affecting people, making
the best people to ask about this would be anthropologists, who understand the evolution of human beings and how we are basically hunter-gatherers. So we have been civilized for less than 5,000 years for the most part. Okay, so if you take evolution as fact, you say that human beings have evolved over 4.5 million years. So for the smallest, most tiniest imperceptible sliver, we've had civilization. So we come from hunter-gatherer tribes in which we had a very limited amount of potential mates. So if you think about it from a male perspective, and I'm sure you know this, you're a guy, all guys are visual. We get turned on by the shapes. That's one of the things why, you know, we like porn more than women do, for sure.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Now they're making women porn, and that's a whole nother kettle of fish sort of thing. But generally for men. So if you put ourselves and you say for 99.9999% of the time, we were in small tribes in which we had maybe 20, 30 potential mates in a lifetime, which meant that that was our visual stimulation. And now you fast forward, you know, 10,000 years or so, or 5,000 years, whatever, from being hunter-gatherers. And now we have computers where we can look at an unlimited amount of potential mates, not to mention just walking down the street in the city. And this, we think that we are these city people, and that, you know, we learn to adopt or adapt to our environments, obviously, but we generally are hunter-gatherers, and we are meant to be small, tribal. So this effect that it has on the human brain is absolutely devastating. And this is why I'll give, for an example, the Ashley Madison. Do you remember those leaks that happened? All right.
Yep.
So when that happened, I knew right away the fix was on. I believe that that's one example of how they're trying to destroy heterosexual monogamous relationships by, you know, enticing males through porn, you know, through all these suggestions. So if you imagine yourself as a hunter-gatherer, and, you know, what would the suggestions be if in a daily, you know, maybe you go down to the watering hole and see some woman bending over, and that would, you know, you could go crazy or excited, right? But that's you know, that's the extent of it. But now everywhere you turn, you are flooded with all these unlimited suggestions. So this is eradicating people. I recently did a whole study case of Japan, and how Japan, okay, right now in Japan, the lowest birth rate in the history of Japan, in over 120 years of recording the birth rate, it is now below 1 million people, and they are closing down all these cultural events because there isn't a population to support it. So Japan is in absolute turmoil. And if you look at it, Japan is one of the best examples of extreme porn. Tentacle porn, hentai, all these things, doll porn. Like, now there is a huge percentage, I'm saying 40% of men in Japan do not want to get married. 40%.
Well, we're also seeing that with the millennials, but I mean, there's studies that have shown that they're just too busy, or they're too busy making a life for themselves than to be worried about being in a relationship.
Well, that's it. And society conditions you into it. And why are you too busy? Well, it's because you have to work umpteen jobs in order to pay for your education, which you'll probably be indebted for life. So what happens is, and this is what the New World Order fully understands, is that if we tax people, if we force both fathers and mothers to work, if we make education extremely expensive and we make these people indebted for life, then they're far less likely to have offspring, because you know, if you think about what it costs to bring a child into the world, they say to raise a child from the age of birth to the age of 18, adulthood, is anywhere from 250,000 to 500,000. So, you know, you're talking enormous amounts of money and cost. And so you have all these outlets, these horrible New World Order outlets like ButtFeed or BuzzFeed, who program people into, it's so much better to have a dog or a cat than it is to have a baby. And look at all these things that you'll be able to do with your time, and you won't be indebted. You won't have all this. So that this is all part of the social conditioning. All these factors coming together are leading to the lowest birth rates in human history.
But why do you have to attribute it to some kind of divine plan, or, you know, non-divine plan, I guess you would say? Well, why does it have to be planned? I mean, why can't it just?
Well, that's an excellent question.
Because kind of falling into place.
Yeah, if you go back throughout history, and so history is one of my specialties. at the turn of the 20th century, so the early 1900s, the biggest worry on the planet was overpopulation. It's quite astonishing when you think about it, because there was about 1 billion people on the planet around 1900, 1901. So the people who are at the top, now we could talk about Bill Gates, we could talk about Oprah Winfrey, we could talk about Ted Turner, David Rockefeller. I mean, we could mention the most powerful people in the world have constantly stated over and over again that there are way too many people on this planet. So eugenics-based organizations like Planned Parenthood have been, by hook or crook, trying to, condition people into stop having families, pro-abortion, all these things, turning people against religion, turning people into LGBT, which is one of their major cards that they've been using for the last couple decades to try to convince people to move away from having babies. So we know that the New World Order, this shadow government of the wealthiest people on the planet, want to be able to control the world. They want to be able to control, they want to form a one world government in which they have control.
Because what I see is them constantly denying that they have anything to do with one world government.
Of course, they're not going to come out and tell you. They don't want you to know that they're against the national sovereignty of great nations like the United States and stuff like that. David Rockefeller in his, and I posted this to I'll show you the quote if you want to see it, which I posted to Roaming Millennial. And it's in David Rockefeller's memoirs here. And hang on a second here. I'm just going to dig it up. And you can see this in his book, where he states, "Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I'm proud of it." That's David Rockefeller, who founded the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission, and many other think tanks that exist in the world, which are very much involved in this depopulation agenda.
Right. Well, I mean, he's a businessman, so of course he's going to want to open up his enterprise to the whole world so that and have less regulations by doing so, and he can make more money. I mean, that's what businessmen do. I'm sure Donald Trump would probably tell you the same thing, even though he's an American nationalist.
Yeah, I mean, but it's easy to confuse globalization and trade and markets with one world government. What David Rockefeller is explicitly stating is that he is trying to form a one world government. And so that is very important for people to understand. It's interesting because Vladimir Putin talks about the New World Order all the time. I mean, he specifically mentions it almost in every speech, what they're up to. He even talks about the gay agenda because, of course, in Russia, it's against the law to promote gay culture. So even recently, he had a speech on New Year's Eve, which he gave at a private sort of club in I think it was in Moscow. And in that speech, he specifically stated how they are trying to normalize pedophilia in the United States. And he was specifically mentioning how they're using all these genders to program people into depopulation. So you're talking about one of the most powerful people in the world, and he knows all this stuff is going on.
Talking about a man who violates human rights at every turn.
Well, who are we to point the finger when we invade countries with no legitimate excuse whatsoever? How many countries has the West invaded? I mean, you go back throughout the history of the United States, and they are chock full of being imperialist and invading countries and installing puppet governments and, killing millions and millions and millions of people. War. I mean, this is a perfect example. I mean, you cannot throw stones if you live in a glass house, so I really don't think that those claims, I mean, that's just the controlled media here, which I call the corporate media. And it's important for everyone to understand that there are 6 corporations, which are soon to be 5, that control all of your media, and they all attend.
What 6 corporations are those?
Let me see if I can dig it up here. Viacom, just off the top of my head, Time Warner, Disney. Let's see, 6 corporations own the media. And you can Google search this, or I could share my screen and show it to you. There are 6 corporations that control all the media. The corporations are General Electric, News Corp, Disney, Viacom, Time Warner, and CBS. And between those 6 corporations, now, if you contrast this to the 80s, there was 150. And if you contrast it to the 1950s, there were over 500 different media corporations.
And so you're saying all 6 of those corporations have the same agenda?
Absolutely. They all attend the Bilderberg meetings. They're all pushing the same thing. When 9/11 happened, which is 100% an inside job, they all took the line. They all gave the same delivery. None of them questioned anything. None of them did any investigative journalism. They all said Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, terrorism. We must support our troops. We must, galvanize and invade these countries. So, and there's gazillions of examples. I mean, the corporate media is beyond hopeless. Anybody that puts their trust in, and when you think about it, don't just think about the Disney Channel or Time Magazine. Think about, if you're thinking Time Warner, you're talking hundreds of different publications. Things like MTV, ESPN, which they use all these different tentacles to program people into their New World Order agendas. So it's really astonishing. This is a very, very, very big problem that, the media is completely controlled.
Well, okay, so the point of agreement you'll get out of me is I can definitely see that the leftist mindset does control the majority of our media, but I mean, there could be many reasons for that. One of the biggest ones that I see is that leftism is seen as the enlightened view. It's seen as what you would do, what you would believe if you were a compassionate and good person. Kind of painting it as, hey, this is the only belief system you'll have if you are actually a good person and not a Nazi or a racist or a sexist. I mean, I'll definitely contend that, but again, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch for me to say that this is something that a world cabal is coming up with.
You just have to connect the dots. I mean, it's you have to know your history. You have to know who these people are. You have to understand all the secret agreements that they're involved in. You have to understand what they discussed at the Bilderberg meetings, what has come out of the Bilderberg meetings.
But I don't even know what they discussed at the Bilderberg meetings. You're not there.
Well, a lot of the documents have been leaked over the last 60 or 50 years or so.
Can they be corroborated?
Absolutely, 100% corroborated. In fact, you can prove beyond any doubt that they planned things like the Euro and the European Union and all that at the Bilderberg meetings. And they also planned the Amero, and they were going to have for the next stage for NAFTA was going to be a North American Union.
Yeah, I was hearing that 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course. I mean, they planned. It's not 10 years ago that they planned this. It's like they planned this like 56. I mean, the whole.
If they have control over the world, then why aren't they doing it? I mean,
they don't have control over the world. The world is a massively huge and complicated place. They don't. They have control over.
Well, they have control over the Western world, right?
They have control of the financial institutions. They have control of the media. They have control of people within the governments that they have positioned. But they don't control everything. I mean, the world is so big and complicated, and we still have things like democracy, in which, I mean, a lot of people think that has been completely compromised as well, and that there are no legitimate elections. But then we have the false dichotomy, of course, which in the United States is the blue pill or the red pill, the Democrat or Republican, which, of course, is never going to solve the problems. It's just going to, continue this control that they have. So it's not like I don't make the claims, and I never have made the claims that they control everything and everybody works for them and everybody is part of this new world order. Of course not. But you're talking about most of the people probably within the American government are fairly clueless about the new world order. They don't need all the congressmen, all the senators, they don't need all the governors, but they need enough of them. They need enough people in place to be able to carry out these things. Key people and key.
So what do you think about Donald Trump? Is he a wild card in this, or do you think he's a plant?
I don't think anybody gets within sniffing distance of the presidency of the United States without being on board with the overall agenda. I think that they have differences and it's not that Donald Trump is necessarily 100% controlled. He may not even realize to the extent of what is exactly going on. He may not understand, but I suspect he does. And he has very strong ties to the Council on Foreign Relations, to the Israeli government, of course. So, I released a video after Donald Trump got elected saying Donald Trump is a New World Order president. So I haven't seen a non-New World Order president since, maybe the argument could be made, Kennedy was the last one, and they offed him. So they're not going to tolerate people who are going to,
Well, I mean, they're not tolerating it. The CIA is actively trying to get him out of office by releasing uncorroborated reports saying that Russia put him in there.
Yeah, that could all be smoke and mirrors. Although, of course, you're referring to the Russian sort of documents, right, that connected him to the Kremlin and the Pissgate and all that stuff, the golden showers. Yeah, it's interesting that, it's not always easy for us, we do the best that we can to try to interpret what is being funneled through us via the corporate media. So, I don't know the veracity of those documents. That could just all be a big smoke and mirrors to keep people, they create these, they create stories. The media often creates stories in order to keep people distracted and talking about things that have no consequence or importance. So throughout the history of the United States, you can see these stories that people will tune to and focus on and get all heated over, and really ultimately they have no effect on anything other than just being a complete distraction.
I mean, okay, so no disrespect intended here, but it really seems like with a lot of these theories that there's a lot of assumptions being made and a lot of false things trying to support the assumptions being made. Like, we can say that they go to the Bilderberg meeting, but what do they go there to really discuss? I mean, for all we know, they're just trying to come up with ways to compete better. You have things like you're saying that no one gets within sniffing distance of the presidency without, being involved in the scheme in one way or another. But I mean, if you say we still have some kind of democracy, then maybe he's there and the people who are in charge don't want him there. We're seeing that. We're seeing very heavy pushback against him. I mean, what I'm seeing is just, I mean, it's just a lot of speculation to me.
Well, yeah, I'm not showing you all the evidence. I'm not giving you a presentation or a slideshow. We're just having a discussion here, and I'm telling you from my research, years of research into this, and my own personal experience, that this is definitely happening. And I think that everyone should be concerned. The fact that 6 corporations control all your media should be enough to give you nightmares, because that
definitely is concerning, and that's something that I've touched on my channel many times, and I think a lot of people in the skeptic community have that. CNN and all those other news corporations are controlled by people who have a different agenda than the common man does. Mm-hmm. That much is accepted by anybody who has any kind of skeptical, what's the word I'm looking for? Instinct at all. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yep. But at the same time, we can't just go and say, because if we start just pointing at a one world cabal, we're not actually going to fix the issues. We're just going to be talking about, it's that damn Illuminati again, when we can actually be fighting against it in ways that are respectful. I mean, you put down maybe a strong word, but you speculated against roaming Millennial simply because she had Milo Stewart on her channel. I don't know, man. I think that's a little.
That's okay. I have no regrets whatsoever. In fact, I took it easy on her. In fact, if you've seen my work enough, you'd know that I usually take the gloves off when it comes to this stuff. But I took it easy on her because I actually enjoyed some of her content, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt. I still try to give roaming Millennial the benefit of the doubt, even though she's displayed incredible ignorance and hypocrisy in not wanting to even contemplate that there could be a shadow government controlling our governments, and that they're trying to create a one world government, or that the whole gay LGBT and the unlimited genders and all that is actually a psyop against humanity in order to depopulate us. So, if you don't even want to discuss those things, but yet you're willing to bring on people who are pushing those very or incredibly evil agendas, then I have no sympathy whatsoever. And yeah, that's what's going to happen. I mean, if I see this the same from some of these other Johnny Come Latelys, SJW critics that are on the scene that are seem to get a huge following out of nowhere, I will come hard and I will expose what they're up to, because they could very well be pitching for this team, whether they know it or not. So for me,
you're gonna go hard against these people over speculation. Like, you don't even have any evidence against them.
I have what do I have? Well over 200 videos of research done into the LGBT agenda, showing everything.
Right. What about her? I mean, you can't just. I don't know. To me, it just seems like you're just pointing, like you're going hard, like you said.
I wasn't going hard. I've gone way harder. In fact, ask anybody that listens to me. Roaming Millennial. In fact, people, you can read in the comments of the videos that I've done, are speculating that I have a crush on her because I went so easy on her.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that in our chat too. But
so I mean, come on, seriously? I mean, the girl gets a free pass because yes, she's a beautiful woman, and you have to be skeptical, and you have to be skeptical in this day and age. You just can't accept people coming out of the blue and you know, singing all these songs and then all of a sudden promoting these agendas, whether they know it or not. Now, I give her the benefit of the doubt. I say, hey, let's have a discussion like we're having right now, and we can talk this out and let your audience make up their own minds. And maybe some people will start to investigate deeper and start to realize what's going on, and other people just don't want to hear it. I mean, let's just be honest. Most people do not want to have their paradigm shifted. They do not want to face that. And I understand that. I had my paradigm shifted with 9/11. It was not pleasant. I went into depression for 2 months because I had to deal with the idea that our governments are actually creating these events in order to take away our freedom.
So you're a truther too?
Pardon me?
You're a truther as well?
No, that's a very loaded term, so I can't possibly identify as a truther. They've
okay, so when I use it, I just mean you believe that 9/11 was not done by terrorists, but was done by our government. Is that
absolutely
correct?
Well, I mean, it's not that, you know, Dick Cheney and George Bush planned the whole thing. It's far more complicated than that. But yeah,
I was involved in the PNAC, the Project for a New American Century, which I'm sure you're going to use as evidence to say that 9/11 was an inside job, right?
No, I mean, there's overwhelming evidence that 9/11 is an inside job. I mean, that alone, that discussion alone could go on for weeks, and there could be ample presentations given and all kinds of information debated. I mean, you have nearly 3,000 architects and engineers, certified architects and engineers, who believe fully that those towers were only brought down by controlled demolition. So those are experts in those types of fields. So, you know, you have to listen, at least give an earful to these people and give them a chance to explain their point of view. So yeah, I mean,
I've definitely done that. I watched all the documentaries. I read the commission report on where a bunch of experts got together, and that while they said that they may have found thermite in some of the rubble, that might have just been because of the way that the towers fell. And you don't have to melt steel beams with jet fuel. You just have to make them soft, and then guess what? It falls down.
It's a paradigm shift. That's what it is. And I understand. Like, I understand where you are, and I understand that you don't want to go down that road. I understand that. I totally understand. I have friends, family, you know, that just don't want to hear it.
Blaming the government for the things that they've done, like releasing LSD into California back when they were starting MK Ultra, like MK Ultra. I mean, yeah, I can definitely look at the things that our government has done and been like, yeah, they're not very nice to our citizens. They do tests on them without them knowing. In fact, there was an entire town that had a test on it without them knowing. Yeah, it's definitely something our government is pretty shady, but I do not believe that they killed over 3,000 people just to try and get us to go to war.
Well, so it's far more complicated than that, and there are far more agendas that are being fulfilled with something as catastrophic and of the magnitude of 9/11. So no, it's not just about going to the Middle East and securing those countries, installing puppet governments and Rothschild banks. There's a lot more to it than that. But you can go, and if you want to do some serious research that will open your eyes, I strongly suggest you research the Wolfowitz Doctrine, which eventually became the Bush Doctrine, in which called for a new Pearl Harbor in order for the United States to establish its supremacy over the world forever. And that they
that
would
was
never
in Project for a New American Century, in that document, and they were discussing that it would take an attack similar to Pearl Harbor to push the American agenda across the world.
Exactly.
That's what
Pearl Harbor was also. It's not Pearl Harbor wouldn't be properly defined as an inside job, because obviously the Japanese did carry out the attack, but Pearl Harbor was completely set up, and that they wanted it to happen. And that's exactly why they had old ships that were in the harbor docked, and most of the newer frigates and aircraft carriers were all out at sea. They wanted Japan to attack. And in fact, people don't know this because they don't understand the history of World War II, and they don't understand how much the United States was involved in China attacking Japan. Prior to United States engaging themselves in the war, they were fighting a proxy war, and they were flying thousands of sorties out of China to bomb strategic Japanese targets, because it was only a matter of time before the two superpowers of the Pacific, which were bumping up against each other everywhere. So it was imperialism. You had the Japanese that were seizing all these territories in Southeast Asia. Then you had the Americans that were doing the exact same thing. And there were two massive bubbles that were pushing up against each other. And sooner or later, it was going to burst. And they knew exactly that the Japanese were coming in. They knew that the Japanese would hit Pearl Harbor, and they set it up so that they could use it to galvanize American support and enter the war. And that became, the event that Americans immediately signed on. And this is what you got to understand. This happens all the time. Gulf of Tonkin's another example. We could talk about Operation Northwoods, in which they were going to do the same thing. Actually, they were going to fly planes into buildings and stuff in along the coast of Florida in order to set up an invasion to Cuba. And this has all been released. All these documents are available, and you can see. And Kennedy was the one who stood up and stopped it from happening. This is the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the Pentagon who wanted to
Can you explain
Cuba.
that a little bit further?
Yeah, Operation Northwoods, which was it was an attempt, and in the Americans, you can go to the Bay of Pigs. I mean, I don't want to go through the whole history of Cuba, but the Americans were very, very intent in installing a puppet government in Cuba, taking over Cuba, installing a proxy government. And so the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the Pentagon, whipped up Operation Northwoods. This is entirely 100% fact. You can search it up yourself. All the documents are available, in which they called for a number of attacks that would be carried out by Americans, right? Including airplanes flying into buildings, in which they would blame it, of course, on the Cubans, and that would be used as a reason to invade and take over Cuba, or at least install a puppet government. And Kennedy stopped them. And that's one of the reasons why Kennedy was assassinated. And that's why he spoke out against secret societies, and he tried to warn Americans that secret societies are repugnant and they are the worst possible thing. And that's the reality. You have secret societies that are running your governments, and they control the media. There are 6 corporations that control the media. You should never, ever trust any of them. And if you do, I can't help you. I mean, it's not, they're not going to lie about everything, but they're going to lie about the big things, the most important things. And they're never going to be there to dig for the truth on these events. So 9/11 also, I mean, in the presentation that I gave the other day, sort of as an introduction to the New World Order, there are umpteen different examples of predictive programming showing exactly what was going to happen at 9/11. I mean, uncanny, showing planes flying into buildings. I mean, from 5, 6, 10, 15, 25 years back, you could, the whole movie there, what's it called? Back to the Future is all about 9/11. And there's
It is?
Yes, absolutely. There's a whole documentary on it. It's quite fascinating. And there's just so much more. The problem is that I understand, like, I'm not here to spook people. I'm here to try to help people wake up and realize that you got to question this shit. Like, I don't want to, like, if you're somebody, say you're a friend of mine, and you don't want to hear this stuff, I would not be telling you this stuff, because I respect your right to not be traumatized by these facts. But you know, if you stick your head in the sand, and enough people stick their head in the sand, well, you're gonna die with your head in the sand, sort of thing. I mean, it's either we stand up and we start exposing the bigger picture of what's really going on, or we pussyfoot around and play these little games on YouTube channels, thinking that somehow we're contributing to I don't know what. And that's what I see a lot of what's happening on YouTube, is that there's just, you know, I mean, amongst the super popular sort of social critique channels, there's very few that ever touch the New World Order or talk about these things. 9/11 Truth, Operation Northwoods, Gulf of Tonkin. There are so many examples, and you have to understand you have to understand the history. If you don't understand the history, the burning of the Reichstag, you have to understand how they use these false flags to galvanize people to push these political aims.
We all know that the burning of the Reichstag was a false flag by the German government, or by Hitler. But the thing is, though, okay, I think you'd get a lot more people to listen if, like, there are things that our government has done that we should be talking about. Like you said, Operation Northwoods. It's a confirmed thing. It's a declassified document. It actually happened. MK Ultra. These are things that we should be talking about. Declassified documents stating that they performed tests, mind control tests on unwitting citizens. LSD, that was a thing that's been declassified, that the CIA released it in California to start a social movement. Yes, these are things that we should definitely be skeptical about and that we should look at. But when you start pointing the finger, I guess, at secret cabals and all this other stuff, you start losing people.
Okay, though. But I mean, I can't help. I mean, if people don't want to go down that road, they don't want to entertain that, then that's fine. But just don't pretend that you know exactly what's going on, because you don't. Because if you're not even going to examine these things, you're not even going to take a microscope and really examine every little detail dealing with them, then you're probably better not to talk about them. But definitely you should not dismiss them until you have done the proper investigation. And that's what's paramount, is that people dismiss things because they shattered the paradigm, and they don't want their paradigm shattered. They don't want to believe in that there are cabals and secret shadow governments and Bilderberg meetings and stuff like that. The Bilderberg meetings were covered up forever. Nobody ever talked about them. It was only dogged researchers that constantly, went around following these people, getting tips here and there, picking up documents. And eventually it was, forever the corporate media, all the politicians always denied it. No, there's no such thing. I am not going to talk about it. Bohemian Grove, the same thing. They don't want, they refuse to acknowledge it. And then finally, when the evidence is overwhelming, then they started ridiculing people who come out and protest, and they start belittling it, saying, oh, so what? All the most powerful corporations and all the most powerful government organizations, all the most powerful academic institutes, all the most powerful of everybody meets together at these secret meetings every year, and nobody should be worried about that. So the corporate media just turns a complete blind eye, but because they are there, they are attending these meetings, all of them. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, who are you going to trust? You're going to trust the people that lie to you, that never do proper investigation, that control all these media outlets, that program people into these dead-end these dead-end lifestyles, which are the LGBTQ and SWXYZ insanity. And these things are evil. They're not liberating. They're actually, they're here to destroy you. That is the reality. And that's what I'm trying to reach people with. And that's why I get angry when I see people helping promote these agendas, because I'm like, well, these agendas are evil. So you're basically, whether you know it or not, you're promoting an evil agenda, which is there to destroy people.
Well, okay, so let's say that there's not, for the sake of argument, let's say that there's not a cabal directing all of this, okay? And let's just say that that's the way that it is. Is it still evil that people want to show compassion for those who aren't, as, I guess, normal as the rest of society? I mean, is that evil, or is...
okay, I see what you're saying. You're saying, let's pretend that there is no secret cabal, there's no agendas, and it's just people that are fighting for their rights. Right. Okay. Yeah, but that is liberalism. I mean, if you go by Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati, their first point that they made was, and this is back in the Bavarian Illuminati, was preach liberalism. I mean, that's the first thing, because they knew that's the way to rot civilization. Liberalism is a mental disorder that people suffer from, and this is all brought in by the cultural Marxists, and the cultural Marxists promote any minority of any, no matter how insignificant, over the majority in every way, shape, and form. That's why everywhere you turn, there are attacks on white people, especially white males. White heterosexual males are the only fair game that is out there.
We can agree we can totally agree on these points. Okay, we can totally agree that the liberal agenda, the progressive liberal agenda at least, is very much damaging to society. We can agree that that the way they're pushing it is very authoritarian and pretty scary. But I think where you and I diverge is where there is a secret cabal directing it. I do believe that the media has a lot to do with pushing it, and those 6 corporations that you were talking about are definitely guilty of pushing their own agenda. There's no doubt about that if you have a bone in you at all. But I just don't see the evidence presented that shows that there is a cabal behind it. Like, I haven't seen a single piece of evidence in anything that I've watched that shows a direct link to somebody with power with these things.
Well, you can go by what the cabal says themselves in their quotes about depopulation. Henry Kissinger himself said that the #1 priority of the developed world should be to depopulate the undeveloped world. That is, he's been quoted several times. Ted Turner says that there should be a one-child per family policy instituted, and he believes that there should be 500 million people on the planet. He's been quoted gazillions of times. Bill Gates, whose father used to be the head of Planned Parenthood, one of the United States' biggest eugenicist organizations, said that the #1 problem in the world is population, and that we have to do these things to bring down the population. Of course, one of the things that he gave was vaccinations that would severely help bring down the population. These people, they don't like us. I mean, they don't like us. We're bottom feeders to them. They don't like you at all. They want to get rid of you, and that's why. I mean, like, when people might, like, even gay, lesbian, transgender people might make the mistake and think that I'm against them, and I'm not at all against them. I'm not at all. I feel for them. I want to help them. I want to save them from what is happening. I don't want them to be unhappy, so I want them to be able to live the life that they want to live, as long as it's according to the law. So, I'm 100% in favor of gay people having the right to be with other people and not be persecuted or, picked on or beaten up or anything horrible like that. But I do not think for 1 minute that you should be going into schools teaching little children that homosexuality is just as normal as heterosexuality. I think that it should always be just a fringe element, but an acceptable fringe element that we can all cherish. Yeah,
I don't think that you should be going into school teaching anything about sexuality to young children. I think when you have sex ed, that's the time to bring up homosexuality. And that's when you're like 15, 14, maybe? I don't know.
Well, let's think about this then. In Ontario, okay, the most populated province in Canada, so there's 12 plus million people in Ontario. The current premier of Ontario, the leader of Ontario, is named Kathleen Wynne. Now, she is the most powerful dyke on the planet, pretty much. She has one of the highest positions in the world for somebody who identifies as LGBT. Now, she penned a radical sex ed bill, a curriculum for Ontario, with a convicted pedophile, a guy who's serving time right now, was a former minister in the government who is now serving time in prison for pedophilia. They co-scripted this radical sex ed bill that was going to teach 6-year-olds that your sex is fluid and you could change it anytime you want. They were going to, at 8 years old, they're going to introduce the concept of homosexuality. And then at 9 or 10, they're going to teach people about anal sex and how to do it safely and all this shit. And this happened. It's a fait accompli. So kids in Ontario right now are getting this New World Order sex ed curriculum. They are sexualizing children. They are normalizing pedophilia. And I have shown this in dozens of videos. Ever since Jared Fogle came out, I said, look what they're doing. They're calling it a medical condition. Look at all the propaganda in the media, how they're saying, you know what, we should try to understand these people. Now they've got categories like...
Whether it was called a medical condition or not, the man is still demonized. I mean, he's
having sex with little girls. I mean, it's fucked up. I mean,
Mhm.
and it's demonized. You know, don't have sex with little girls, then nobody's gonna beat down your door. You know, these people. This is how it works. I mean, Jared Fogle.
Right. I'm not saying it's wrong to be demonizing him. What I'm saying is that the population has demonized the man when you're saying that they're using it to normalize it. It's
No,
the exact opposite reaction.
You're not seeing what's going on. You haven't followed this enough. No, it's the opposite. What they're doing, in the New York Times, we covered this recently during the whole Pizzagate affair. The New York Times has these articles out talking about normalizing pedophilia and understanding pedophiles, and that pedophiles are suffering from medical, and the whole perception of them has to change. The Health Life Network. These are all the same 6 corporations that constantly put out all this transgender stuff. This is why, you know, you got the transgender tipping point with Laverne Cox, Orange is the New Black, the show that programmed women into transgenderism and lesbianism, just like the show Oz was to program men into homosexuality. All the media is conditioning people through all their tentacles to normalize this behavior, which is anything but normal. 46% of male transgenders commit suicide or attempt to commit suicide. 46%. 42% of females attempt to commit suicide. Those are the highest rates of suicide in the history of any demographic in the history of the world that's ever been recorded, including people who were in ghettos in World War II, people that were starving to death, people that are suffering from disease and all these other factors. There is no higher suicide rate than amongst transgender people. These people are mentally ill. And the worst thing that we could be doing is telling them, you know what, it's the rest of civilization that is to blame. You are the most awesome thing ever.
I agree with that 100%.
Good. We see eye to eye on something. So I mean,
yeah, I definitely agree.
You understand though, like you know, when Time Magazine puts Laverne Cox and puts the transgender tipping point on the front cover of their magazine, they are promoting mental illness. They are promoting the LGBT agenda, the eugenics agenda. They want people to ruin their reproductive ability. This is what it's all about. It's about taking control of human reproduction. This is why I don't freak out, but I do get frustrated that these SJW critics who come after these transgender people with their insane sort of, you know, I mean, Riley J. Dennis is 100% an actor. There's no way that's real. That's just a guy wearing a dress and putting on some lipstick, getting in front of the camera. He is reading the script. He is an evil person who is misleading people. And I see what's going on. It's like you have this queer kid stuff. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, I definitely have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about, the girl with whatever she identifies.
It's okay to be gay. Yeah.
Yeah, with a teddy bear, and she sings with the ukulele. Now she typically gets 2,000 views per video. Now I covered her a few weeks back, and when I covered her, a whole bunch of other people covered her. Now everyone's covering her. Now what I have to think is, like, I just looked at my feed here. You got this guy Hunter Avalon, who is another one of these SJW critics that has burst on the scene. Young guy, very presentable, very polished videos. And they're all covering these people. And of course, they are ridiculing these people. So I commend them for that, because that is a proper reaction. But they are not at all seeing the bigger picture of what's really going on. And then you could take it a step further and say, actually, they might, whether consciously or unconsciously, be promoting this stuff and helping spread these agendas, because otherwise nobody would look at
that one step further. That one step further is a giant step further to me. I mean, it's like,
it's not at all. If you understand how, if you understand Cass Sunstein, for instance, or the GCHQ. Now, I've done a whole breakdowns on the GCHQ handbook for online chilling, and the 77th Brigade out of Great Britain, 2,000 soldiers put on Facebook and YouTube full time to push certain agendas and to attack others. Israel employs tens of thousands of people to promote certain agendas all over the internet. So the United States government, Obama, the information czar for Obama was Cass Sunstein. Cass Sunstein released a book in 2005 called The Conspiracy Theories, in which he advocated arresting people who believe that 9/11 is an inside job. He also advocated that we need to infiltrate these groups and cause as much. We should embarrass these people. We should dox them, post their personal information online. We should shame them, do whatever is necessary, break them up, cause infighting. And this is exactly 100% what I see all over the internet. So I believe that the New World Order is extremely active in trying to push these agendas. And I'm not saying that Roaming Millennial is a shill. I'm not saying that Hunter Avalon's a shill. I'm not saying that you're a shill. I'm not saying that anyone specifically is a shill. I'm just saying that there are definite hundreds, thousands of shills that are involved in pushing agendas. So, you know, I am concerned that some of these channels may be not legit, and that their purpose might be just to introduce people to these concepts by ridiculing them, but really then next thing you know, placating to them and saying, hey, you know, we got to listen to these people, you know, they've got a point of view and all this. And so that's my concern, looking at the whole SJW critic movement that has sprung out of nowhere over the last year or so, and it's hijacking the whole meme. And so I could legitimately present a lot of sort of circumstantial evidence that this is a way of gatekeeping people from finding out what actually is going on, what the whole LGBT movement is really about. Not about the people that are involved in it, because they believe that they're fighting for their freedom and their rights. And I understand that. I sympathize with that. But who's really behind it? It's like the suffragette movement itself. A lot of people think, well, I mean, let's be honest. I'll say 100%. Men and women should be 100% equal. Okay, there's no doubt about that. But the suffragette movement was funded by the Rockefellers, and the Rockefellers wanted to use the suffragette movement so that they could take the kids away from the family, have both parents working, and be able to tax twice as many people. This is it was their perfect sort of card to play to destroy the family nucleus. And now motherhood is considered something that is extremely frowned upon, especially amongst the third wave feminists that are out there, and that it has been normalized that women do not raise their kids anymore. Mothers stay at home for a few months after they have a baby, then they're back to work. That is insanity. And that is the worst possible outcome. And this is why children, once they reach the age of 4 or 5, their parents have little to no influence on them. 95% of the influence is the institution that they're in, the media, and their peers. And so this is all by design, unfortunately. I mean, there are good things that come out of it. Obviously, equality for women, which was something that was, you know, long overdue.
I was going to say, you can't be against equality for women.
No, of course not. But you know, not at the expense. I mean, like, okay, equality for women, period. Okay, but the idea and the notion that is being perpetrated throughout the corporate media is that, you know, it's being a mother is exhausting, it's draining, it's depressing. I've shown this over and over again, especially through women's fashion magazines, how they're promoting these lifestyles and trying to taint traditional motherhood as something nasty. Now, right. I can tell you almost, I said this before, I said, I don't know anyone that grew up in a family that is together. Every single person I knew grew up in broken families, divorced families. These are the result of parents that are overstressed, overworked, and not allowed to do proper parenting. I think that
I agree with you again, 100% on that. But I do not agree with the extra step you take. That was something planned by someone many years ago.
Yeah, you have to. That's the problem. You don't have the historical context. You don't understand the Rockefeller family. You don't understand the Rockefeller Foundation. You got to understand.
I was a big poster at ATS for about 5 years of my life. So I mean, I've delved into this shit pretty deeply.
Yeah, ATS is a controlled site as well. They were talking about Top Secret, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I won't get into that. But I understand what you're saying. So you have entertained a lot of these
definitely,
conspiracies.
yeah.
No,
definitely.
Look, it's not 100% one thing or 100% another thing. When it comes to women, of course, women equality is extremely important. Now, should women be doing, now what is happening, I've been showing this like crazy on my channel, is they're reversing the roles. So they're pacifying men, emasculating men, which is absolutely evil. BuzzFeed, if you just sub the BuzzFeed rainbow channels, they're BuzzFeed blue, violet, orange, red, whatever, they have all these different channels. They are constantly getting men to do women things and women to do men things. So men dress up in women's bathing suits, men, you know, dress up in high heels, men try Korean makeup, you know, men do this, men do that every single day. And then the opposite with women, where women are trying men's beards and stuff like that. It's absolutely toxic what they're doing to people. So when they when you take traditional sort of female roles and you make them look like they're bad things or they're stereotypes, which is what the third wave feminists do, and they are against women staying at home and raising the kids. Look, in my opinion, the job that a mother does potentially is the greatest job that anybody could do in the history of the world. Being a great mother could be better than being the best rocket scientist in the world, because what the effect that you have and the model that you set for that child, you could make that child be a super child, and then you can make that child have multiple super childs because of that passed on sort of ideology that motherhood is an absolutely sacred and awesome thing. But they have destroyed it. They have made it so toxic. They've made it so that it's so normal for women not even to have, not even to be with their toddlers and off at work. I mean, it's absolutely unbelievable. So I say with this,
I agree with you that the destruction of the nuclear family is a problem, and I also agree that it's such a problem that it's causing a lot of millennials in particular to not be able to deal with life's problems without needing a safe space and a shoulder to cry on every 5 minutes.
Right.
But what I mean, so someone in my chat did say, you're saying that the same magazines that promote breastfeeding in public also hate moms. I mean, how do you reconcile that?
Which magazines promote breastfeeding in public?
Pretty much every liberal magazine or publication out there.
No, I don't see. That's not what I've seen from the work that I've done covering it. No, but that is a small sort of issue. That's not like, look, I mean, let's get into the reality of what's going on. What I'm saying is this, okay? There is a lot of good things about the suffragette movement and women, obviously women being equal, 100%. I mean, women could be a much better leaders than men. They could be much better teachers. They could be much better at anything, and vice versa sort of thing. Like we are the only difference is our physicality, really. But, when it comes to intelligence and all that, we're 100% equal. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind. In fact, I often think women are better at a lot of jobs than men are because of their nurturing sort of instinctual sort of behavior. But I do think that women should really want to be mothers, and I think that should be a significant portion of their life. And it doesn't mean sacrificing everything else. It just means that having children and raising children a priority. And then okay, so maybe that takes 15-20 years of your life. You still have another 40 years probably on top of that, since the average woman lives to about 80 years old, to do whatever you want to do. Yeah, get PhDs, be a rocket scientist, do anything. But I think that
are you a follower of Vigilant Citizen?
Yeah.
Okay. So do you believe in the same kind of involved cabal he believes in, where they're involved in the music, they're involved in music videos, symbolism, stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Rockefeller is the name of Jay-Z's record label, and Beyonce and them, all that Satanism. I would suspect, and because I work with a lot of very popular sort of Christian truthers, so probably Vigilant Christian and KJ Osborne, Scariest Movie Ever, people like that.
Right.
I suspect that a lot of the Satanism that is infused into music videos, I have, like, this is something where I'm a little bit different than the Christian truthers, because I suspect that a lot of it is to load the term up of Illuminati. I did a huge series on exposing the flat Earth psyop, and I also did the Mandela effect. And these are Cass Sunstein operations to infiltrate movements and to make them look silly. So what happened with, say, a good example is Roman Millennial. When we were in our little Twitter spat, there was some of her supporters saying, "Oh, it's just another flat earther or whatever," right? And I've done 59 videos debunking flat Earth, whole podcast showing that it's a complete psyop. There's no truth to it whatsoever. It's insanity. It's idiocy. And I did the same thing with the Mandela effect.
Why is it a psyop and not just stupid people?
It's a psyop because, that's a very good question. all these questions are good. I mean, okay, why is this psyop? Well, it's partially due to my history of being somebody who's been targeted by operations, and there was a particular one that was called the TransAsia event, which was this plane crash that happened in Taiwan, in which dash cam footage of several vehicles captured this plane that you probably remember it. I mean, it was pretty spectacular. The plane crashed into a sewage river in the middle of Taipei, to the capital of Taiwan. So back then, when I was truthing, there was a split within the truther community where a bunch of people who we now pretty much know are shills were pushing that was staged and it was CGI. And they used that event to try to divide up the truth movement at the time, which I was playing a central role. And I had a show called We'll Do It Live, the Real Alternative Podcast. We featured all kinds of people, and it was really huge momentum. There was a lot of good vibes back then. So that was used to totally destroy the truth movement. When I was following the people who were involved, they all universally started promoting flat Earth instantly at a certain point. Like within a 2-week period, everybody that was involved in that operation started promoting flat Earth. So I knew right away it was a psyop. So yes, there are a lot of dumb people for sure. Mandela effect is the perfect example. I mean, it's the most idiotic conspiracy theory ever made. And yet there are thousands and thousands of people. And I know that Mandela effect is a psyop as well, because channels like Shane Dawson, very popular channels, Tana Mongeau, are promoting this as well. The reason that they do these things is this, and I showed it in my videos. If you remember when, now if you've probably seen a bit of the flat Earth stuff. I mean, it did go viral. Do you know the rapper B.O.B. and Tila Tequila? Do you remember? Okay, so you remember that B.O.B. came out and said the Earth is flat, and posted Twitter pictures, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson, right, the astrophysicist, came out, and they had a Twitter war, and then it became mainstream, where he went on late night television and he dropped the mic and gravity and all that stuff, right? So it was it became mainstream. So what happened since then is that when and they did several articles. So another example is Discovery Television, where they were talking about conspiracy theories and the New World Order, and they were saying, well, they're just a bunch of flat earthers. So the tactic is, and I showed this with the GCHQ handbook, which is the British online sort of infiltration that is very well, I've done numerous videos on it. Their tactics are to come in and push idiotic conspiracies in order so that when people are confronted with conspiracies, like the Illuminati, they have a knee-jerk reaction, and they say, well, you're a flat earther because you believe in the New World Order. Right?
Have you ever been to, I think it's Illuminati.org, or I don't know, it's somebody claiming to be the Illuminati. They put out a book, and basically they were talking, there was a whole chapter devoted to basically how they've made it so that no one will ever believe you when you say that the Illuminati exists, because that's just the way it's been loaded. Which is basically what you're saying.
Did you remember Jim Carrey going on late night, I think with Jimmy Kimmel, and he was wearing he came out and he was making the pyramid sign and sticking his tongue through it, and Jimmy Kimmel said, what are you doing? I'm Illuminati. You see, this is how they work, because they know. Now that's why I use the term New World Order, right? Because that term is not quite as loaded, and there's a lot more truth to it. It's on your dollar bill. So it's a little bit easier to fend off the knee-jerk reaction when it comes to that. That's why I never use the Illuminati term in my videos, even though that would make a lot more views, because people search those terms. I believe they brought back the Illuminati term, and this is what I believe dealing with the music industry. I do believe that a lot of these people are Satanists. I think there's tons of evidence to support that, and I think they do show a lot of the rituals that they conduct, and I think that they do, one of the ways that they're able to maintain their power grid is they do force their puppets to undergo certain rituals in order to ensure that they'll never, ever, ever deviate from what they're told to do, sort of thing. So that's a whole.
So when you say rituals, are you talking about stuff that would get them in trouble if it were released or something like that?
Yes, that's exactly the way to think of it. Pedophilia, satanic ritual sacrifice, snuff sort of parties, things like that, which are all well documented. There's no doubt that these things go on. So yeah, I think they use those. But I think in a way, and this is where I differ from a lot of the Christian truthers, I think in a way that they have purposely infused incredible amounts of Illuminati symbolism and Satanism into videos in order to be able to mock the idea of the Illuminati. It's a way you build it up so that people will look at it and question it, but then you can just easily dismiss it when you bring out your Jim Carreys and stuff like that, and you say it's Illuminati. These people are crazy, right?
So while Vigilant Citizen will say that this is an outright attack on the people and that, you know, they're invading your mind with symbolism, you're more thinking that they're just trying to make the idea of the Illuminati even more ridiculous.
Yes, yeah, I know that they're doing that. In fact, when you mentioned the Vigilant Citizen, I only subbed his channel and I've seen his website before. So, and he's covered me before way back in the past, but I mean, like, I am subbed to gazillions of people and I've probably seen 3 or 4 videos off that channel. So it's not like that's a channel that influences me in any way. Most of these channels don't influence me. Where my influence comes from, I like, if you look at my YouTube channel, you can't see it, but I'm subbed to all the corporate media. And then a lot of the SJW critics, a lot of these of the alt-right media, and that's where I base a lot of my research on is just, you know, either watching a lot of videos, covering videos or articles and publications that have been made. So, but yes, I do believe that the Illuminati is a loaded term, and just like the flat earth was brought in, and these are methods to deter people. It's like a gatekeeping method. So it's like, if you're at a party and say you're discussing 9/11 truth, right? And you're with friends, and you get in this riveting discussion, and then the person says, "Oh, are you one of those flat earthers?" And you say, "Yeah, I am." Oh, then everybody laughs. Nobody's going to take you seriously because, I mean, of course, you're stupid if you think the earth is flat. So that is why they brought in the flat earth psyop, and they employed a number of shills, a few dozen shills, which I exposed in numerous videos and podcasts over the past couple of years. Showing that was an entire operation to sink any credibility that was exposing the New World Order. They don't want people to wake up, so they want to throw ridiculous conspiracy theories and attach them to legitimate conspiracy theories to create that knee-jerk reaction, so that people, when confronted with legitimate conspiracy theories, will automatically think of the ridiculous ones and not take them seriously. It's very clever, I have to say. I mean, it's probably the tactic that I would use if I was Cass Sunstein or the GCHQ.
Right. Well, okay, so we went over pretty much every question that I had. I will want to do another stream with you at some point and cover something else you had discussed, but we'll talk more about that later. I do want to thank you for joining me. Please stick around after I end the stream here, but we're getting to the point where I gotta end it. No problem. So I do want to thank you for joining me. I do want to thank everybody else for joining me as well. This has definitely been a good discussion. I'm glad to have been able to give you a platform and then debate with you a little bit about it.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, man. So again, thank you everybody for joining me, and get the fuck out of here.